Hello, everyone. How are you doing this evening? So today, what I want to talk about is how do you find a rental property during the holiday season? Quiet as it's kept, the holiday season is probably one of the best times for both purchasing a property and also one of the best times for getting rentals as well. And the reason why it's a good time to purchase a property, and the reason why it's a good time to rent a property during this time is because the market is slow and you'll find your best deals during the holiday season, right? So while I see, Black Friday deals and things going on sale everywhere, very, very similar concept when it comes to rental properties. And the reason why that is because very few people want to move during that time frame, right? And you would think, supply and demand, less supply, more demand, right? But the way you have to kind of look at it is because there's less activity, rental property owners and people who have properties on the market want to do more to increase the activity, right? And so they'll give you better rates. Um, and particularly if the market is slow, because typically, traditionally, the slow season is, from November all the way through probably March or April of the following year, right? So, so when you take that into consideration, this is a great time to find deals on rental properties, and it's a great time to move as well because you'll put yourself in a position where you'll get the property at a good price, and everything surrounding that move is probably going to be at a better price as well, right? So if we're talking about movers, if we're talking about um, cleaners. Yeah, everything is slow around this time. I mean, everything is slow around this time when it comes to real estate. And so this is definitely a great time to move. And so before we go any further, if you're watching us and you like the content that we're providing, share, like, and subscribe. The YouTube algorithm definitely likes it when you share and you like the content, even if you dislike it. So please do that. And I want to talk to prospective renters, people who are looking to move. If you have any questions about what you can do to help your prospect of finding a rental, if you're having issues with your credit, your income, if you need advice on what you need to do before you start searching for a property, I'm here to provide you that guidance. I have a link within the description that will allow you to call in and just use that link to call in, and I'd be open and willing to answer any questions you have related to, searching for prospective rentals, screening processes, any questions that you have around rentals as a whole. I'll be able to provide the answers for you because I do this every day, all day, right? And so I'm able to provide you the guidance that you probably won't get anywhere else. And I can almost guarantee you that I can get you in a rental property, any rental property, if you call in, right? Now, I'm not going to be the one doing the approval, but I know what they're looking for, right? And knowing what they're looking for, being able to provide you that guidance and those answers, on the front end is going to help a lot. If you look at the market right now, any market that you want to go searching, you'll find that you have a ton of properties on the market for rent at the moment. Um, and those properties are not renting fast. And I would argue a lot of those properties are going to stay on the market until probably January, right? Because you're already at the end of the month already. We're coming up on Thanksgiving tomorrow. After Thanksgiving tomorrow, you're gonna have December 1st, and it typically takes 30 days, right, for the application process, the transition, everything like that. So it takes a good amount of time to get everything taken care of and done. People going on vacation, people not answering their phones in terms of the property managers or owners until probably after the weekend, right? Now, if you're dealing with a, active, investor or someone like that, they may be accessible the day after Thanksgiving. They may be showing properties over the weekend. I'm actually going to be showing properties on Sunday, right? And so for me, it's just another day, right? The only day I'm probably not going to be showing properties is tomorrow. And that's because no one's going to request showing a property tomorrow. But if someone wanted to see a property on Thanksgiving, I would show them a property on Thanksgiving. Because like I said, the market is slow. And the way that you get your properties filled is being accessible and making sure that you are you're available. A lot of my properties, though, they are on rent the key boxes. And so the prospective tenants can go tour the properties at any time of their choice. And, shout out to Renly. They're one of the vendors that I use to make the process of showing properties more efficient. And so for you, as a rental property owner, this is not a rental property owner. For you as a prospective renter, this is a great time for you to find an ideal rental for what you're looking for. I actually had a prospective tenant contact me today for a property, and they were concerned about the requirements. Um, what's the credit score that we're looking for to approve the tenant. I told them, it's based on the overall strength of the application. And so the reason why we say it's the overall strength of the application is because most rental property owners and, well, most property managers, they take and most of us, we use a system to evaluate the prospective tenants, right? And it kind of gives us a score and lets us know whether we think whether the system lets us know whether it thinks that this is a good tenant or a good prospective tenant or not based on, the income, credit, background. We still have to do our due diligence and identify and verify the information that we get from the tenant. But it takes a bunch of different data points to determine if the tenant meets our criteria based on the information that we've provided to it. And so this particular individual, I'm guessing the reason why they were asking their question is because their credit is not where it needs to be, which is why they were harping on, what's the credit score that you're looking for. And so I told them it's based on the overall strength in the application. They said they're going to put an application in. And whether they do or they don't, I don't know. But at the end of the day, at this particular point in time, it's a great time to look for a rental property, right? And there's several things you can do to, determine if the rental property is more um, negotiable, right? And so one of the things that you can do to determine if the rental property is more negotiable is look for the length of time that the property has been on the market, right? Most rental property owners, they like to get properties rented within a 30-day time frame, right? Anything less than a 30-day time frame is really good. More than 30 days, you start getting to 60, 90, 120 days. It becomes problematic because you got to think each of those months, particularly if there's a mortgage on a property, they have to pay, that's holding costs, right? Holding expenses. And you typically don't want your holding costs or holding expenses to be more than 10%, right? So if you have a property that you have for rent, you really don't want more than 1 month to be holding costs, right? After that, it becomes very, very detrimental to your bottom line because you're losing money. And once you lose that money, there's no way to really catch that up, right? There's really no way to recoup that amount that you've lost for the time frame with the properties not being rented, right? And so you have to do different things like, I've offered free flat screen TVs to entice people to apply for a property. I've offered free cruises. Now, when you offer things like that, particularly on platforms like like Facebook, they ban you. And so you have to be, careful about how you present offers for rental properties, but it's really no different than, when you're providing a toaster or something like that, right? And so you're not allowed to pay any commissions or anything like that, which you don't, but you can give discounts to the rent, right? And if a tenant is moving into a property, you can certainly provide incentives for them to choose your property over another owner's property. But like I said, one of the key things that you can look at is the length of time the property has been on the market. Another thing that you can probably look at is see, if they have any moving specials, right? And so a moving special, if someone has a moving special in for their property, whether that's a month off of rent, whether that's um, a discount of some sort, security deposit assistance, any of those things, it tells you that they're looking to move the property. They're looking aggressively to get the property rented. So that's number two, right? Look to see if they're providing any type of incentives for you to move into the property. The third thing that you probably want to look at behind whether how long the property's been on the market for and any incentives for the property. You want to look at how many other properties that property manager may have on the market for rent, right? So if a rental property owner or property manager has a lot of properties on the market for rent, and a lot is relative, right? I mean, if you only own one property, you have that on the market for rent, and it's been vacant for a long time, that's 100% vacancy, which is no good, right? If you have 1,000 properties and you have 10, right, that the vacancy rate is a lot less. But you still, a lot of rental property owners don't want to have even 10 properties, available on the market. But if you see that an owner or property manager has 10 or more properties on the market for rent, even if you don't know how many total properties they have, you can bet that if it's been on the market, if their properties have been on the market for a long time and and they're providing incentives, concessions, then they are looking to get the properties rented quickly, right? Another thing is, and you should probably look at this first, right? Because the number one rule in real estate is location. So you want to look at the location that the property is in to determine if that's an area that you want to be in. But if you do research on the location that the property is in and you identify key information about the area, maybe key anchors that are in the area, or if the area is on a negative trajectory, meaning it's going down in value. That's another thing that you can look at to see if if you can get a good deal on it. And just because the rental prices are going down in a particular neighborhood doesn't mean the neighborhood itself is going down. It may be that it may be a lot of properties in the area that are on the market for rent, and so the rates are going down because of that, right? And so that's the fifth thing that you want to look at, right? So not only looking at how many properties this particular rental property owner or investor may have available for rent, but you want to look at the total amount of properties within that particular neighborhood or within that zip code. The more properties you have within that zip code that's available for rent, the more likely you're going to be able to get a better deal on the property. I had a tenant actually that I was managing a property that they lived in, and it came time for the lease renewal. And typically, I try to be very fair when it comes to the lease renewal. I don't typically don't raise the rents more than 10%, regardless of how high the market rents have gone, because I want to gradual catch up with the market rate. If you, especially if you have good ticket tenants, right? If you have a sticker shock where you raise the rent for a an exorbitant amount, they may just find it more beneficial to move. And so I typically don't raise the rent more than 10%, but I gradually try to raise the rent each year to catch up to the market rate if it's not already at the market rate. And as the rate change, we adjust. But the tenant that I was working with, they were like, "Hey, Roland, you want to raise the rent for this property?" And the only reason why I tried to raise the rent, I was raising the rent at that particular time because I really didn't think, based on where the market was, we could have. But the owner wanted me to test the market out and raise the rent, so I did that. And so what ended up happening is the tenant said, "Hey, look, listen, I'm already paying." At that time, they were paying $2,800 for the rent. It's like you have other properties in the area that are being rented that are there for on the market for 2,500 within the same neighborhood. It's like if you raise the rent, I'll just move to another property. I told the owner, I was like, "Hey, if they move, we're gonna have to find another tenant, and another tenant coming in. The market rate for that area is around 24, 25. So you're gonna lose about $400, $300 a month if they move." And so the owner backed off, and we kept that tenant for another year. Um, and so and so looking at the other properties that are in the area will definitely give you a good insight on where the market rate should be, and the leverage that you have for um, for um, for renting the property. So what I would say is, so those are the five key things that I would tell you to look for when you're searching for properties, particularly during the holiday season, right? So number one, right, you need to um, look to see, what the property you need to make sure that you need to look to see if the rental property has any concessions on it. I think that I said number two, that's number two, right? But put it in number one. There's no particular order, right? But so you want to look and see if there's any concessions um, on the property that you're trying to rent, right? Number two, you want to check and see if the investor or property management company have a lot of properties currently on the market for rent. Number three, you want to look at the area to see if there are a ton of properties on the market for rent. Number four, you want to look and see how long the property has been on the market for rent for, right? And number five, you want to see if the rental properties in the area are in the downward trajectory, meaning the rental prices are going down on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis, because that's going to give you a lot of information. But if you look at those five things, it's going to give you a lot of insight as to, well, if you can negotiate and get into a property. What I will tell you, if someone contacts me and say, is the owner negotiable on the rate? The response is probably going to be no. The best way to ask that question is, does your rental property have any concessions, right? You'll find that, and that concession may be a lower rate, right? You'll find that if you use the language that they're used to, that you'll probably get a better result, right? Because rental property managers and owners are not oblivious to concessions. It's something that's used all of the time. But if start you start the conversation, asking for a lower rate, they may look at that as, you know, you can't afford the rent where it is, and because you can't afford the rent where it is, you're trying to get a cheaper rent. And they may not be the case. You just may be a savvy renter and you're looking to get a better price. But, if you can come in and say, "Hey, do you have any concessions on your property?" And then you can say, "Hey, there are other properties in the area that are being rented for X." right? Then you'd have a leg to stand on, for lack of a better word, to negotiate and get the rate that you're looking for. And so I would say um, make sure that you look to see if there's concessions, and if you don't see it, ask. Asking if they have concessions is something that can get you a very good result. Now, I'm gonna take a break, take a pause, and I want to say is if there's anyone who is currently watching this live stream on YouTube, call in. I'm here to help. I'm here to answer any questions you have about rental properties, and in particular, if you're searching for rental properties and you're having issues right now trying to find a rental property, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you and provide you insight into how to get into a rental property, particularly during the holiday season. So who am I? Maybe I should have done this in the beginning, but I didn't. So my name is Roland. I am a rental property manager and a real estate investor based out of Tampa. I've owned rental properties for a number of years. I am also the president-elect for the Florida State chapter of the National Association of Residential Property Managers, NARPM. Great organization. If you are planning on renting a property, if you are planning on putting a property on the market for rent, you should always make sure that the professional that you're working with is in NARPM. If they're not in NARPM, you shouldn't be working with them. Now, there are other organizations that provide rentals, particularly for multifamily. That's BAAA, Bay Area Apartment Associations. And so, I mean, if you're going to apartment association, if you're going to an apartment building, then yeah, more than likely those individuals may be in BAA. But if you are going for a single family rental or properties that are less than, 100 units, make sure the property manager is in NARPM because those credentials is very important because we work to make sure that the profession is done right. Yeah, but so that's a little bit about me. Yeah, and I'm open and available. Well, the line is open, and I'm available to provide, guidance and feedback on any questions that you would have about rental properties, rental property management services, finding a tenant, if you are a landlord or a property manager, and finding a property if you are a prospective tenant. And it's not that difficult to find a rental property. The challenge that you are going to have is being qualified. And there's a lot of slumlords out there, right? And you don't want to get stuck in a slumlord situation. So, so if you have any questions, call up, call in. I, that's what I'm here for, right? I want to be able to provide value. I want to be able to answer your questions. And I think if you were to call in, you get a better result than what you're currently getting now. I have quite a few properties that are currently on the market right now, and there are people who are trying to rent those properties, but they don't meet the criteria. I have a property in the 55 and older community right now, and someone called me, and they're 53, right? And they called me today, say, hey, I know it's the holiday season, and it's the day before Thanksgiving. I'm interested in this property, the property you have in Newport Richie. And I'm like, are you 55 and older because of the 55 and older community? And just a note of reference, 55 and older communities are the only communities that can discriminate. Right. And so if you're not 55 and older, they will not allow you in that community, right? And so for this particular community, only one person in the house has to be 55 and older. Everyone else needs to be at least an adult. Otherwise, if anyone's under 18, you cannot live in that community, right? So there's no There's no adolescents that are allowed in that community. And 55 and older communities are the only communities that can discriminate. They are legally allowed to say, no, you're not of age and you cannot live in this community, or you have children under 18, you cannot live in this community. That's not allowed in any other types of community. So you need to be mindful and careful of that. Yeah, so what other tips can I give you? I mean, I think I've given you all of the key tips and indicators of what you can look for. And I'll repeat them again because repetition is the key to learning, right? Alex Hermosi says intelligence is how quickly you can learn something, right? If you learn by hearing it or reading it or being taught it the first time, then that's the speed of learning determines intelligence, and that may be the case. But hard work beats talent. I believe that in education. I believe that in many different aspects because there are a lot of people who are gifted in terms of knowledge and being able to learn, but because it comes so easy to them, they don't work hard at it. And someone that works hard at a particular subject or topic, they outperform someone who's naturally gifted because they spent the time to, um, they took the time to put the effort into to get better, right? But having said that, I mean, I digress. The point that I wanted to get at is when it comes to rental properties and when it comes to getting a rental property during the holiday season, the key areas and the key things that you want to look for to determine if the rental properties is a good um, is not on sale is probably not the right word, but to give you a better chance to get that rental property, right? So the first thing is you want to look at how long the property's been on the market. Number two, you want to look at if the property's been on market, regardless of how long the property's been on the market, how many rental properties this particular owner or property manager currently has on the market. Um, Three, if they have any concessions, right? If they're offering any types of benefits or discounts for someone to rent the property. Four, you want to look at the area, look at if there are any key anchors, and look at if the trajectory of the rents are going up or down. And five, you want to look at overall, the amount of properties that they have in that particular market. Um, and because all those things are going to be very important in determining how quickly they want to get it rented and what type of discounts that they're willing to give you for you to rent that property. So those are the five benefits, or those are the five tips that I want to give you if you want to if you want to get a good deal on a rental property. And you can get good deals, in high-end areas. You can get good deals in blue collar areas. It all depends on where you want to be and what you're looking for in a rental property. Um, I can tell you, if your background, income, and credit are not where they need to be, then you're going to want to make sure that you have a co-signer of some sort. Other than having a co-signer of some sort, you want to make sure that you are taking the opportunity to, other than having a co-signer of some sort, you want to make sure that you're taking the opportunity to make sure that your credit is intact. You also want to make sure that your background information is where it needs to be as well. I mean, there's a couple of prospects that I've done, background checks on, and the system comes back with no information. Coming back with no information is almost worse than having bad information, right? Because then it's like, okay, why is that? And there's some people who have some type of block on their credit or in their background for one reason or another. Sometimes it's legitimate, sometimes it's not. But when those things happen, it automatically disqualifies you because if I can't verify information about you, I'm not gonna I'm not going to allow you to rent the property, right? Because then I can't, it's very hard for me to make a determination on whether you're a good tenant, bad tenant, or other. So, you need to make sure that when you submit these applications that you have all your ducks in a row because it's going to make it a lot easier to vet your application. It's going to make it a lot easier for us to determine whether we can approve your application or not, right? And there's sometimes rental property owners and property managers, they have lower priced properties that are on the market. And so if you don't get approved for a property at one price, check to see if they have other properties that you can get at a lower price. And so that's why it's important for you to check the website or check the listings to see if they have multiple properties on the market. And some property management companies have multiple branches, right? So maybe you're dealing with a franchise, or you're dealing with a business that has multiple offices, and then they may have rental properties from those different offices. So you may want to ask, do you have any other offices that may have rental properties that are available for rent? Some rental properties they put it they put their properties on Section 8, websites as well. So you may want to ask if the property takes Section 8, if you need that type of assistance. And sometimes when you ask those questions, some rental property owners, some property managers, they shy away from that, although they shouldn't. I tell people all the time, you can have a good tenant that's Section 8, you can have a bad tenant that's Section 8, you can have a good tenant that's a long-term renter, you can have a bad tenant that's a long-term renter. It all depends on your screening, right? And I said this in the last show that I did, is the best way to keep a bad tenant out is to not let them in. And so you'd want to make sure that you're taking the opportunity to evaluate your renters and fully vetting them to ensure that they're not doing anything they're not supposed to in the property. And they haven't done anything they're not supposed to in any other properties that they've been in. But also, you want to make sure that their background, income, and credit is to the standards that you are looking for. Now, what should your standards be, right? And so, what I've found is that there's no silver bullet, there's no one answer. And I really haven't done research on, if a tenant has a 700 better or better credit score, does that make them a better tenant? And it definitely would, you would assume that, right? Because it means that they pay their bills on time. So that's definitely important. Someone with a high credit score, they're not going to want to mess that up. And so that's definitely important. But, people with that level of credit score is not well, I don't want to say it's not common. Not common is probably the wrong word. But you definitely reduce your leasing pool when when you have rental properties that are, the average rents in average areas, and you're looking for a 400, 700 credit score. You definitely do reduce your applicant pool, and that will definitely increase the amount of time that it takes for your property to get rented. And you want to try to reduce the amount of time that it takes for your property to get rented. So you want a good balance of, length of time that it takes for your property to get rented, the price as well, right? And so you need some type of balance between, the credit score, the income, and the background, right? And so if someone can't afford the rent, you definitely don't want to put someone in a situation where they can't afford the rent. And typically, you want a tenant that makes at least three times what the rental amount is. Uh, Having a tenant that's three times that makes three times the rental amount um, has been shown that they're able to afford all of their other bills, right? And so you tie that into, we typically have required credit score of about 600. And then, like I said, I've said this before, having having an eviction is not fatal. Having a bankruptcy is not fatal. It just depends on how long ago it was, right? If you had a bankruptcy 7 years ago and it's been discharged, that's probably not going to be held against you. If you've had an eviction 7 years ago and you haven't had an eviction since, that probably will not be held against you. But if you have a current eviction that within the past couple of years, right, 5 years even, you may be able to get what it's been 5 years ago, but definitely 1 or 2 years it's going to be challenging, right? And so you'd want to make sure that you get a prospect. Or you want to make sure you get a co-signer. If you have any blemishes on your background, your income, and your credit, your best bet is to get a co-signer of some sort, because that's the only way that you're going to get an approval, right? That's the best way for you to go get an approval, by having a cosigner. Because what a cosigner does is it reduces the risks to the prospective it reduces the risk to the landlord or the owner that you are going to default or not pay or have some other issue that causes, you know, the owner to lose money, or causes the property manager to lose money, right? Because, rental properties, it's a business, right? It's a business and they're trying to make money through this. And the reality is, and people think this, and they can be so wrong. They think people who have rental properties are rich. People who have rental properties are not rich. They're not rich at all. The majority of people who have rental properties are struggling, right? And you say to yourself, well, why would someone have a rental property if they're struggling? Well, it is a great way to build wealth, right? But it is stored wealth, right? Because one benefit that you'll get by having a rental property is that while you own the property, you have somebody else paying down the mortgage, which is paying down your principal, which is increasing your equity, right? So you get a little bit of cash flow and you get a lot of equity, right? So if you have a mortgage of $2,800, someone's paying you 3,000, your mortgage is getting paid for, right? And that mortgage, and so that mortgage that they're paying, comes back to you as equity, and then the cash flow that you're getting, you can use for whatever you want to use it for. But the reality is, the average cash flow for rental properties is just $100, right? That's the average. There's a lot of rental properties that make a lot less than that. And the reason why they make a lot less than that is because they bought the property for too much, or they bought it wrong, or their underwriting didn't take into account their holding costs and the other costs that they may have. And so it takes a while to turn that around, but it takes a while to make money, right? And so that's why you see a lot of people go into multifamily, because in the multifamily, you get, a lot of those $100 cash flows, and it turns out into a lot of money. But one property is not going to make you rich. So, so when you think that you see a landlord, you think because of a landlord they have a lot of money. They don't. They don't. Some landlords are in the red, and some of them are not savvy enough to understand how to leverage the tax code to deduct or to appreciate, or to depreciate their properties so that they can get a tax benefit, and they don't have the knowledge to deduct their expenses so that they can get a tax benefit that can benefit them in other areas financially. And when they don't have that skill set, it it hinders them, right? And so when you see someone that is looking to rent a property, and I can tell you, a lot of rental property owners are desperate. Just the other day, I had a prospective renter that contacted me, and they asked me, am I the owner of the property? I said no. And they said, well, yeah, I'm looking to work with the owner because they are easier. Not easier to work with. That's not what they said. But they said it's easier that the rental property owners provide or didn't say easier to manipulate. I want to say easier to manipulate. But what they said is rental property owners are more accommodating, which they can be, right? Because I've heard rental property owners that that wanted me to evaluate whether I can manage their properties for them. And they say, I have a soft heart and, someone comes, gives me a sob story and they, they run with it. And, for me, I don't get emotionally attached to properties at all. And I tell every investor that I work with, do not get emotionally attached with any properties, right? You have to treat it like a business. You have to treat it like it's a transaction. Yes, you're dealing with human beings, and yes, human beings have issues, but their issues are not your problem unless you make it your problem. And I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to be cold, but you do not have unlimited resources. And the reality is the margins are very low. $100 is not a lot. But if you put yourself in a position where you have a bleeding heart, people will take advantage of that. And people often do, right? Renters often do take advantage of that, um, which is why I'm fair, but I'm stern, right? If a tenant doesn't pay their rent by the 5th, I'm sending out a 3-day notice to pay up credit by the 6th. And if they don't pay their rent by the 6th, I'm sending off to the attorney for them to file the eviction in the court. And at that point, it's a race between you paying your rent and the attorney completing the eviction. If you get the process finished before the attorney completes the eviction, then you can stay. If you don't get the process finished before the attorney completes the eviction, then there's going to be a writ of possession submitted. Um, and then that writ of possession is going to go to a sheriff. And then the sheriff is going to go meet you at the property and have you moved out. And speaking of sheriff meeting you at the property, the other day, there was a sheriff that was serving the eviction, and I did a show about that, where the sheriff was shot. And it was unfortunate. There was 3 sheriffs that went out there. 2 of the sheriffs were shot. Um, and the person who shot the sheriff is in critical condition, I believe. Even the locksmith that was there to change the lock, he was shot as well. And that's unfortunate. But, the rental property business can be dangerous. It can definitely be dangerous. People, particularly around the holidays, right? Because people get very sensitive around the holidays. People get so sensitive. I mean, they say the majority of divorces happen around the holidays. They say a lot of deaths happen around the holidays. And I believe it. Like people get so emotionally charged for one reason or another during the holidays. And it becomes problematic for some, right? And eh, I would be surprised if the reason why, um, well, no, that's probably not accurate, right? Because not a lot of people move around the holidays. But if people are moving around the holidays, it's because they're trying to get away from somebody, right? They're trying to get away from somebody that they don't want to be with, right? Whether that's a marriage, whether that's, family, brother, sister, what have you, right? So, so I mean, it's not funny, but what I will say is, right now, it's a good time to look for. If you're looking to buy a property, if you're looking to rent a property, look to buy a property, look to rent a property during the slow season because that's when you're gonna get your deals. That's when you're gonna get your deals. We're not gonna have the kind of deals that you'll get at Walmart or Amazon, with Black Friday sales. Not saying that is not something that shouldn't happen, right? Like, but we have to market properties a little bit differently than you market merchandise because a lot of websites that you try to, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do that, right? I'm not going to put it on Facebook. Facebook will ban you for doing something like that, but I'm going to say, hey, flat. Black Friday rental property, um, Black Friday rental properties, right? Yeah, I'm gonna give them a discount. Let me see what would be a good discount? A few months rent, right? That's not bad, right? A 3 months rent. I'm gonna try that. Let me see what happens. 'Cause I have a couple of properties I need to get rented. And I'm trying to get them rented before the new year. So I'm gonna do a Black Friday rental property uh, sale and see what happens. Yeah, that should be a good opportunity for people to get value. Black Friday, but they have to move in before January 1st. In order for them to get the deal, they have to agree to move in before January 1st. And that shouldn't be too difficult for them to do, right? Because it's already end of November. December is right around the corner. We typically want our tenants to move in before the beginning of within 30 days, more or less. That's what we typically look for. So that shouldn't be too much of a heavy lift, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll definitely see how that goes. Yeah. So, I gave you the 5 tips, right? And I'll tell you what to look for again when you're looking for a property during the holiday season, right? So number one, look for how long the property has been on the market. Number two, look how many properties that particular rental property owner or property manager currently has on the market. And this is not in any particular order. Number three, look at the amount of properties that are on the market in that particular area. Number four, look to see if that property, if the area is on a downswing, meaning if the rents for that property, for that area, um, are going down. And then number five, look for if the rental properties have any concessions on them, right? And so if you look for those 5 things, you'll be able to find a good rental property. And of course, make sure you have a decent income credit and background. But even if you don't, make sure you have a co-signer, because that's going to definitely help you. Now that I've said all of that, if any of you need property management services of any kind, we do have a link in the description for you to book a call, put a meeting on my calendar. And we manage properties from an asset management perspective, and we guarantee the rent if the tenant doesn't pay, and a whole bunch of other things as well. So, if you have any questions or concerns, or if about property management services, definitely use the link to put a meeting on my calendar. If you want some consultation services, and if you're a tenant and you want to buy a property, or if you want to rent a property and you want some consultation as to how you can guarantee that you'll be able to get a rental property, reach out to me. I'll let you know everything that you need to know and what you need to put in place and help you put those things in place so that you're guaranteed to get your rental, right? I look at your situation, I kind of pre-qualify you, pre-approve you, so that when you go out and you look for your property, we'll be able to get you into a property. And if you qualify for one of my properties, I put you in mind, right? And I won't hold anything that we talk about against you. I'll help you get to where you want to be in terms of getting a rental property. If you're a landlord or a property manager, if you need consultation services, book a call. I'm also open to working and talking with you about what you can do to get your properties rented quicker, or any other questions that you have about rental properties at all. I'm open to having a conversation with you and providing you that guidance. Also, you'll find a couple of links on there for donations, and you can use any yeah, financial institution of your choice that's on there to make a donation. If you have questions about purchasing a property, I can help you with that. You can book a call for that. If you have any questions about buying a property, you can book a call and I can help you with that as well. So, other than that, I do still have the link opened up for if you wanted to call in. We only have about 10 minutes left on the show for today. I like to do the show for about an hour. Typically like to speak for about 30 minutes and then, 30 minutes question and answers. No one called in, but even if you haven't called in, if you are enjoying if you're enjoying the show, share, like, subscribe. If you don't like the show, also click you don't like. It's good for the algorithm. So thumbs down, we welcome those as well. And so if you have any questions, my information is out there. My name is Roland Charles. And until next time.